Hi everyone, welcome to the second presentation in this module of EME 3351. In this presentation, we will discuss the ways that innovations such as technologies are communicated through and adopted by groups of people. This presentation is based primarily on the work of Dr. Everett Rogers. In addition to change management, it is also important to have a good idea of how ideas will be communicated and adopted throughout the organization. If you can obtain a good idea of what to expect when introducing a new technology into an organization and be able to plan for how it will work its way throughout the organization, then it is much easier to plan for successful technology integration. Everett Rogers is perhaps the most well-known researcher involved in studying how technology and other innovations are adopted and diffused throughout societies and organizations. Diffusion is the process in which an innovation is communicated through certain channels over time among the members of a social system. Diffusion is a special type of communication because it only deals with new ideas, which bring about a type of social change. Rogers also shares that diffusion includes both the planned and unplanned spontaneous spread of ideas. Whenever a new idea is introduced into a social system, such as an organization, community, or other group, it follows a pattern of diffusion that matches an S-shaped curve. There is initially a slow growth in the spread and acceptance of the idea, followed by a rapid adoption of the idea by most people in the organization, and a gradual leveling off of the spread and acceptance of the innovation. As we will discuss in a moment, this happens in large part due to the ability of different groups to see and test the technology before committing to it. This diffusion of an idea is facilitated to some degree by the idea that people adopt innovations at different rates. Rogers created adoption categories for these different rates of acceptance and adoption of innovations and identified rough percentages of the population which adhered to each classification. As seen in the blue bell-shaped curve, roughly 2.5% of any given population will immediately adopt an innovation. These people are called innovators. These are the people who always have the new phone, gadget, or toy before you've even heard of it. Another 13.5% are early adopters, who will take the innovation on before the crowd. In the middle of the herd is the crowd, who will typically adopt the innovation along with everyone else and will do it as part of the early majority, 34%, or the late majority, 34%. The final 16%, labeled as laggards, will resist the technology and do their best to never adopt it. The S-shaped diffusion curve that we spoke about a moment ago is also mapped on this graph. The slow growth at the beginning of the diffusion process is the result of the innovators and early adopters taking on the innovation. That is the lower left part of the yellow S-curve on the bottom left. The rapid adoption by the majority is the result of the early and late majority taking on the innovation, which is the steep incline in the middle of the S-curve. And the gradual leveling off at the top right of the S-curve occurs when the late majority nears full adoption and only the laggards are left. This adoption among the population is largely the result of two factors. The first is the potential adopters' ability to observe use of the technology in similar contexts, and the second is their ability to try the technology out before making full commitment to it. These concepts, called observability and trialability, are critical aspects to the adoption process and play an important role in the rate at which technology is adopted in any given population. The innovators, which will generally try anything just to test it out, obtain the technology initially, and then the early adopters pick up on the technology from the innovators through watching the innovators use the technology and being able to try the tools out for themselves without committing fully. The early adopters are watching the innovators for what the next big thing is. Once this early adopter group adopts the technology, the same process happens with the early majority, who are hearing about the new tools from the early adopters. The process repeats once more as the late majority take on the technology that the early majority has adopted. The communication and sharing of this technology is important, as well as the ability to observe its use and try it out before making a full commitment. Deciding whether and when to adopt the technology or other new idea is a process rather than an instantaneous decision. These decisions follow what Rogers called the innovation decision process. According to the innovation decision process model, people faced with the decision of whether to adopt an innovation or not work through 5 stages. The first stage is the knowledge that the technology or innovation exists and how it functions. The second stage is persuasion, which occurs when the technology is viewed favorably or unfavorably. The third stage is the decision that occurs when their actions lead them to adopt or reject a technology. The fourth stage is implementation, which occurs when the new technology is put to use. Finally, the fifth stage is confirmation, which happens when the adopter or rejecter of the technology seeks to reinforce whether they made the correct decision. Their decision at this point may be reversed. Understanding these processes is crucial for carrying out any effort to implement a technology within a given environment. Whether you're rolling out a new inventory system, learning management system, process, tool platform, or other technology, and whether that is to be to the whole organization or just to a group within it, there will almost always be a pattern that approximates Rogers' model. In nearly any effort to roll out technology, there will be a small group of innovators, 2.5%, and early adopters, 13.5%, who will use the technology despite potential flaws and without much hesitance. This usually becomes the support group, the testing pool, and the group who you hope will work to sway the peers into adopting the technology. These are the opinion leaders we mentioned in the change management section. This group initiates the adoption and is the reason for the initial slow growth that Rogers discusses. The rapid growth in adoption will come when the early and late majority adopt the innovation. Together, this is 68% of the population. This happens as more and more people use the technology and share what they're doing with it. The ultimate goal for the technology implementation is the hope that it becomes institutionalized, that is, an everyday part of the life in the organization. No matter how well we plan, how awesome the technology tool is, or how clearly we communicate the benefits, there will be people, at least about 16% of the population on average, who will never accept the technology no matter what. And these people will remain when the gradual leveling occurs in the diffusion process as the late majority nears full adoption. It is also absolutely critical that the use of technology is observable by others in the organization and that potential adopters have the opportunity to test new technology out for themselves. Knowing this and knowing the decision process that people work through means that IT practitioners can plan for these patterns and work to address the concerns and support the innovation decision process as people consider adopting the technology. In tandem with change management, knowledge of diffusion of innovations can help make an instructional technology adoption project successful in an organization. That concludes this presentation. Please return now to the module and continue working through the content.